We could think of a landscape as having separate rooms, and each room has a different particular function. For example, you might have a patio for dining or an open lawn for play. And these rooms are determined by the needs of the homeowner. And we identified those needs as we went through the planning process for our landscape design. And like the rooms of a house, an outdoor room, a garden room, has a floor, it has walls and a ceiling. And these are used to divide one space from the other and produce some sort of enclosure. Now we can look at the floor here in the patio, and floors are mainly constructed of hardscape materials and plants. We have a nice tile floor here with some mulched areas and plants along the side. But a lawn is also another type of floor. And often as we move from one space in the landscape to another, we see some of that floor continue, either a stone path that carries from one room to the next, or a repetition of plants as we move from space to space. Walls are used to create separation between one garden room and another. And walls can be either explicit or implied. This space has an example of each. Behind me we have a pretty full lattice wall that clearly separates this garden from the patio behind it. While in front we have 5 black posts that imply a wall and separate this garden from the next. Will vary in their height and in their density depending on the degree of separation that's desired. Surrounding this Japanese garden, we have a low, fairly open fence that's just simply there to separate it from the space beyond. But in an area where you're looking for more privacy or to hide a view, you'll have a taller, more full type of barrier. This potted jade plant here creates just enough of a barrier to separate this seating area from the one over there. It's more of an implied barrier or wall, but it does the job of giving us a little bit more privacy here. Plant materials also make excellent walls. Surrounding this water garden, we've planted a variety of plant materials to create a sense of enclosure and to really separate this space from the rest of the garden beyond it. To create even more enclosure, you can add a ceiling to your garden room. Different levels of ceiling create different sense of enclosure. The most open feeling is that when there's no ceiling, when the sky is the ceiling. As you begin to move under the canopy of trees, you start to feel a little bit more a sense of enclosure. And that feeling of enclosure intensifies as the tree canopy becomes lower and lower. Now you can create this sense of enclosure with natural materials such as the tree canopy, or you can use hardscape elements like a pergola or an arbor. It's often helpful to use thresholds to mark the transition from one garden space into another. An arbor makes a wonderful transition between a enclosed space to a more open space. You can get that same effect by widening a path as you move out from an enclosed space to a lawn. Or even a very carefully placed boulder can create a very subtle transition marking the end of one space and the beginning of another. But just as we consider the elements of design, the plant materials that we're choosing, when we're designing our gardens, we also want to think about space and think about creating rooms and separation between one room and the next.